Imagine waking up on Monday morning. The markets are opening, your phone is ringing, and the world has changed overnight. While the financial markets were closed over the weekend, the bombs had already fallen. Iran's leader was buried under the rubble. The defense minister was eliminated. The Revolutionary Guard commander was eliminated. 8 of Iran's top officials wiped out in a single night. This was no warning. A new war environment had emerged in the world. But what about the markets? They had seen this coming. Days before the first missile was fired, the yield on U.S. Treasury bonds was quietly falling. Oil futures were quietly rising. War had already been priced in before a single bomb was dropped. So what exactly happened? What does this mean for the global economy, and why does this conflict extend far beyond the Middle East to Ukraine, China, and the future of the dollar? Let's examine this. The United States and Israel launched a coordinated air assault against the Islamic Republic of Iran over a weekend, deliberately timed while international markets were closed. For weeks, U.S.-Iran negotiations had been ongoing, but the terms Washington put on the table made one thing crystal clear: diplomacy was never the real endgame. War was always the destination. The financial signals were there for anyone paying attention. Between February 25th and 27th, yields on U.S. 10-year treasuries accelerated their decline, meaning bond prices were rising, meaning capital was running for safety. Oil futures were climbing. The market was whispering what politicians hadn't yet said out loud. The primary tactical objective of the American-Israeli joint operation was not the destruction of Iran's military infrastructure. It was the decapitation of Iran's political leadership. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the Chief of the General Staff, the Minister of Defense, the Commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, 8 senior figures eliminated in the first wave of strikes alone. The strategy behind this is clear. Remove the hierarchical apex of the Iranian state, and the resulting chaos becomes the weapon. A leaderless regime, fractured, confused, paralyzed, becomes far easier to collapse from within. Based on the footage released by the Israeli military defense, the strikes used a combination of bunker-buster munitions, precision-guided bombs designed to penetrate deep underground shelters, alongside laser-designated paveway bombs for above-ground targets. This was a live demonstration of just how far ahead American and Israeli military technology truly is. The B-2 Spirit stealth bomber, the F-35 Lightning II, the F-22 Raptor. These platforms are not one step ahead of their Russian and Chinese counterparts. They are a full generation ahead. The B-2 Spirit alone carries an 11,000-kilometer range, a 20-ton bomb payload, and internal weapons bays that make it near invisible to radar. No Russian or Chinese aircraft currently in service comes close. Israel, for its part, operates 48 F-35I Adir, a modified version that, unlike the F-35 sold to other nations, runs entirely on Israeli software, integrates with Israeli national networks, and can carry Israeli munitions independently of U.S. oversight. These are not just F-35s, they are a sovereign weapons system in their own right. Iran's ability to respond is real, but deeply constrained. Its primary asymmetric weapon is its ballistic missile arsenal. These are not intercontinental ballistic missiles, not yet, but medium-range ballistic missiles, capable of reaching targets approximately 2,000 kilometers away. Iran has steadily improved their accuracy over the years, achieving circular error probabilities of roughly 10 to 30 meters, using solid fuel propulsion for rapid launch readiness. In a saturation scenario, firing large numbers of older, cheaper missiles in successive waves to exhaust Israeli air defense interceptors, perhaps 5 to 10% of those missiles could reach their targets. No air defense system in existence today, not Iron Dome, not David Sling, not Arrow, not THAAD, can guarantee 100% interception against a high-velocity ballistic salvo. Iran knows this. It is not nothing. Iran also holds one dramatic card: the Strait of Hormuz. A formal declaration that the strait is closed, or even just a credible threat to that effect, immediately drives up maritime insurance premiums, reroutes tanker traffic, and pushes oil prices higher. The strait carries approximately 25% of the world's seaborne oil. You don't need to physically close it to cause economic disruption. The announcement alone is enough. The war itself had already pushed Brent crude above $78 per barrel. An extended conflict scenario, with tankers being targeted and the strait declared a war zone, could send prices above $100. Markets reacted exactly as the textbook says they should. Gold surged, silver and commodities rose, energy prices climbed, the U.S. dollar strengthened against major currencies, the DXY index moved higher. Short-term U.S. treasuries rallied as investors sought safety. Asian, European, and emerging market equities fell. U.S. stock index futures declined. Nothing surprising here. The market is clearly pricing this as a short-duration conflict, one that will be resolved before it fundamentally reshapes global energy flows. But there's a deeper problem for the Trump administration. If oil prices remain elevated above $70 per barrel for a sustained period, it undermines the Federal Reserve's ability to cut interest rates. With the Fed funds rate already sitting in the $3.5 to $3.75 range and annual inflation hovering near 3%, the Fed's room to maneuver in 2026 was already narrow. Persistent energy inflation locks that door completely. And here is the political clock ticking in the background. November 3rd, 2026, U.S. midterm elections. If Republicans lose the House majority, the Trump administration's legislative agenda is finished. A prolonged war, one that hardens inflation, weighs on equity markets, and drains public support, is the last thing the White House needs heading into that election. A short, decisive, politically framed victory is the only acceptable outcome. The pressure to wrap this up fast is enormous.
Now zoom out, because this conflict doesn't stay in the Middle East. The most immediate secondary effect is in Ukraine. Air defense munitions being redirected toward Israeli theater operations means fewer interceptors for Kyiv. Ukraine's missile and drone defense capabilities weaken precisely as Russia watches for any opening to accelerate its own offensive tempo. And Russia's war budget? It runs on energy revenues. Higher oil prices, caused directly by this conflict, refill Moscow's coffers. The war in Iran is, paradoxically, a financial gift to Putin. For China, the implications are even more structural. Iran is a critical node in China's Belt and Road Initiative, the massive infrastructure project designed to deliver energy and raw materials into China while moving Chinese exports to global markets cheaply and securely. If Iran's territory becomes effectively inaccessible as a transit corridor, Beijing's options narrow dramatically. The China-Pakistan economic corridor gains strategic importance overnight. Alternatively, routes to Central Asia, the Caspian, the South Caucasus, and Turkey become suddenly more valuable. For Asia broadly, China, India, Japan, South Korea, Middle Eastern energy dependency is not a talking point. It is a structural economic reality. A sustained disruption to that supply chain is not a geopolitical inconvenience. It is a growth rate shock. Let's be honest about what this conflict reveals. Neither Russia nor China has yet developed the capacity to counter American military power the way the Soviet Union once did, indirectly, through proxy support, through sustained strategic competition. The USSR confronted the United States directly only twice during the Cold War, Berlin in 1948, Cuba in 1962. It supported North Vietnam massively, materially and politically for years. Neither Moscow nor Beijing is currently capable of providing Iran that level of sustained backing. The Iran conflict is, in part, a live demonstration of American military dominance. And China and Russia are watching very carefully, not because they are about to intervene, but because they are measuring the gap they still need to close. The deeper contest, the one that will define the coming decades, is not about Iran. It is about the U.S. China technology and economic rivalry. It is about whether the petrodollar system survives in its current form, Those are the tectonic fault lines. Everything else, as dramatic and consequential as it is, plays out in their shadow. I have never had sympathy for the Islamic Republic of Iran, a regime that has suppressed its own people for decades, that treats the demand for freedom as a threat to be crushed. That regime does not deserve defending. The fact that many Iranians themselves watched the strikes with something closer to relief than grief tells you everything about the nature of that government. But none of that means we should look away from what is also happening here. A U.S.-Israeli partnership using warfare as a policy instrument, while international law watches from the sidelines. History rarely offers clean choices, and this moment, whatever it resolves into, will shape the economic and geopolitical architecture of the next decade. The bombs have fallen, the markets have moved, the world has shifted. The question now is, where does it go from here? If you want to understand the economics and history behind the conflicts reshaping our world, this channel is where that conversation happens. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.